I've done about 3 lists of Bigfoot movies by this point, and every time I do one, I think, should I put Boggy Creek on this list? But then I don't, because I know that there were several of them, and I knew that a timeline was in order, and I figured that it was about time that I did one. So let's head out into this series and see if finding any sort of continuity is easier than finding, an actual Bigfoot. We head out into the wilderness back in 1972 with The Legend of Boggy Creek, which tells us that it's a true story and that some of the people and places are real, and gives us a little kid talking about some sort of wild man sighting. And the narrator tells us that we're in Fouke, Arkansas, right by Texarkana, where the town that dreaded sundown was set, because this is by the same director. It then gives us the experiences of people in the town encountering what they refer to as a large hairy man, or the Fouke monster, claiming it can carry 2 100-pound hogs at once, and the sightings have been occurring for the past 15 years. It's all done in a faux documentary style, and we get our first view of the big fella, and then later he shows up outside of a house and kills a cat, so I'm anti-Bigfoot like right away. A pack of hunters band together to try to locate the beast, and there's a random folk tune just sorta thrown in there.
Hear the Sulphur River flows, rising when the storm cloud blows.
And keep in mind, this film is presented like a documentary and takes place over the space of a number of years, enough for the narrator to grow up. And, another song, okay.
Hey, Travis Crabtree, it's the right life for me.
And Travis Crabtree is actually played by Travis Crabtree as himself. I don't know who Travis Crabtree is, but the man got his own damn theme song, so I'll put some respect on that name. They determine that the monster is a Sasquatch, but they question it when the tracks have 3 toes instead of 5, because it's scientifically proven that all Sasquatch have 5 toes or something. It appears before a bunch of kids and then a sleepover party, and he never hurts anyone, but just freaks people out and then runs away. But near the end half, attacks by reaching into a farm window. This leads to an altercation that puts Bobby in the hospital, and the creature is never found. Now, there's no set date here since the events occur over a vast period of time, but the narrator recounting the story appears to be in modern times, so we'll set it in real-time 1972. Here's where it gets a little tricky, because 5 years later, in 1977, Return to Boggy Creek was released. Now, I say it's tricky because this film isn't actually a sequel to The Legend of Boggy Creek, and is in fact no way related to that one outside of the title and involvement of Bigfoot. It has Kimberly Drummond in her first big role in anything, before her success on Different Strokes. Her mama is Marianne, well after her success on Gilligan's Island, and they talk about rumors of a monster called Big Bay Ty that looks like an ape. While out and about, a family spots something out in the water that they think is a bear, but they hire this guy to try to track it down, and he's just something else.
I'll take my gun, and if there is a monster out there, you'll get pictures of a dead one. And when we get back, you won't have any more monster stories to tell, old man.
And I say that there's no connection to the first film, but it does feature a musical number that says the names of the characters in it.
Jean-Paul, T-Fish, Happy Joe, he passed the trees.
The kids encounter the creatures, leading to a stellar reaction, and they decide that they're going to track it down using skills that they learned from the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, and of course are accompanied by a song that describes what's happening.
It ain't no place for little children to play. Danger lives there.
There's a big storm and they're forced into an old fishing shack, and every time they try to leave, Big Bay Ty shows up and roars at them, so they stay inside. Finally, after the storm subsides, they encounter the big guy one last time, but instead of attacking them, he actually pulls the boat that they're in to safety, revealing himself to be helpful and not harmful. The kids are returned to safety, and there's no visible date here either, but it takes place in a short amount of time, so we'll say that it's all in real time 77. So it keeps staying wild because in 1983, Charles Pierce, director of the first film, returned to the series, but since the second film wasn't really official, he straight up ignored it and titled his film Boggy Creek 2, The Legend Returns. We're back in the swamps of Arkansas, and the Squatch is shown front and center right away, and he attacks a deer. We're then introduced to Dr. Lockhart, played by Pierce himself, an anthropology professor, and he takes a team of students to investigate sightings of the creature. They go to where a farmer had an encounter with him in his barn, which they say was 20 years ago, and there's reports of there being more than one. We see a younger version of the creature, and again, there's narration here, but it's kind of dropped the documentary style. There's a story from 2 years ago with a guy encountering it on the road, a guy attacked while using the outhouse, probably because of those damn enchiladas. He's mostly pretty chill, but when the sheriff that called him there shares his encounter, his tale paints the creature as a bit more aggressive. The students end up stuck in the mud in the swamp and come face to face with it, and then they end up staying at the cabin of a guy named Old Man Crenshaw that doesn't really look that old, and they discover the reason for the beast's angrier nature. The hillbilly has captured the Squatch's offspring and is holding it prisoner, keeping it at bay with fires. It bursts through the door, and Lockhart gives it back its young, and they decide to keep its existence a secret and leave. There's no date again here, so real time 83. Things were very quiet then until 2010 with the release of a movie called Boggy Creek, which has an attack in the beginning and a card saying it's Friday, August 4th, although the only years that fell in that manner were 2006 and 2017. But there's a newspaper showing a sighting from October of 2007. And Jennifer here takes a couple of friends up to her family cabin where her father died. A cabin with a bright green kitchen, and it's in Boggy Creek, which is in Texas. And she meets Dustin, a local guy whose wife vanished there a while ago, and he blames the creature. It's said that he kills the males and abducts the women, so I guess after a long time, we're back to Bigfoot rape. The whole last Bigfoot list I did evaded the whole topic, but not this one, I suppose. They're joined by the guy who got his head crushed by weights in Final Destination 3, and I would like to nominate Maya here as worst friend ever. Jennifer asked her up to her dad's cabin for a getaway, and it's clear that it's a really big deal for her. And not only does Maya ask her friend Dave, who then brings his girlfriend, but then she also asked her boyfriend, and every single person that she asked just acts like jerks the whole time. After way too much hanging out and drama, it finally shows up for like 3 seconds, but then it's back to more relationship stuff. And it takes another 10 minutes to show up again, and by this point, there's only 15 minutes of the movie left, and it kills Dave and takes Maya. Jennifer gets away, but encounters the big guy in the morning, and there's a whole tribe of them, and they drag her away. The end. None of the plot stuff mattered. The character of Dustin literally just disappears, and there's no real date. So we just know that it's after 07, so whatever. Real time 2010. 1 year later, in 2011, another take on the franchise was handled by the legend himself, Dustin Ferguson, with The Legacy of Boggy Creek, which was also released under the title Bigfoot Creek, and also The Skunk Ape Story. It begins in the proper way, with a musical number, of course, although it doesn't talk about one of the people in the story, so points off. Like the classic one, there's a narrator that tells us about Bigfoot sightings decreasing since the 70s, but then has a story from 1985 and a just amazing appearance of the Squatch. Afterwards, there were more stories that it said continued for the next 25 years, so leading up to 2010. There's a news clipping from 1988 and an interview with a woman who says she saw Bigfoot in 1986, and then the story of a bunch of girls at a slumber party in 88. Around the same time, it attacks and kills some dogs, what they call its first aggressive act, and the stories are interjected with folk songs, and then jumps to a story in 1999 with a girl encountering him, and then more stories from 2005, and then it's said that it stopped being cited for several years. There's then a tale from 2009 about two girls who went missing while camping and shows their video footage, and they're attacked, with one going missing and the creature, I think, breaking off the other girl's feet. So there's no connection to the original here, but it could theoretically be about the same creature and just a different documentary about him. And it's hard to peg this down as a single date since it spans an era from 1986 all the way to 2009. There was also another entry in 2016 called Boggy Creek Monster, and again is an unofficial sequel. It mentions the 72 film and takes us back to Fook, and there's again a narrator who had previously written a book about Boggy Creek, and it's again presented in documentary form. We learned that the town of Fook has a whole tourist industry built up, and this one isn't really a part of the timeline since it's not really a film and is actually more of a documentary discussing the actual presumed sightings over the years that inspired the original film in the first place. There's descriptions of a wild man going back to 1913, and then goes into the history of the film coming out and its effect on the community. There's not much difference here between the original film and this, except there's no recreations, and instead there's simply animated moments. But I guess the big difference is that that one seems to know that it's not telling real stories, and this one thinks it is. Also in 2019, there was a 6-episode series called Boggy Creek, the Bigfoot series, that was available on Prime. It's 6 episodes that are about 20 minutes each, so all the episodes add up to what is basically a longer feature film. It was produced by both Fred Olen Ray and Enrique Cotto, and had appearances from Brink Stevens and Eric Roberts, of course, and it's sort of a version of the original, except instead of documentary style, it's a narrative film. So there you have it, a whole bunch of movies about the Boggy Creek legends, and no continuity really between any of them. Most of them are just documentary style retellings of stories that people told about their encounters with the Bigfoots. Most of them fictional, a couple of them were people, actual stories that they had encountered, all of that stuff, and a couple of narrative films in there as well. But nothing is really connected to each other. You could really watch any one of these movies in any order. But yeah, if you've seen any of them, if you know about any of them, let me know down below in the comments. If you want to see more Bigfoot stuff, I want to know that down there as well too. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that like button. If you like what you see on the channel, hit the subscribe button. And if you think about it, go to my Patreon page at patreon.com/movietimelines. You can help support this channel like these guys do because they are awesome. Otherwise, I just thank you for watching these videos. Keep on doing that, and we'll see you very shortly for another great one. Thanks a lot, guys, and bye-bye.